Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and in this video we're going to bring you a pair of subscriber replays for a bit of mid-tier medium tanking. So initially we are going to set out with Mac driving his beloved Comet. Now this is a patch 9.9 game, so this is the standard definition model for the Comet. This is before he got the HD model. I haven't played that many games with the Comet since it got the HD model, actually. I've played one or two so far, not very impressed. The HD model gave the turret armor a bit of a slap in the face. Now the turret armor on the Comet was never absolutely fantastic, but especially when you were top tier it was good enough for a bounce here or there. Anyway, Mac is mid-tier here. Comet is of course a tier 7 tank, and there is technically one tier 8 on each team. The enemy team have a Super Pershing, and the friendly team have an ISU 152. So it's only one tier 8, so you might say, well, I mean, you could argue about whether it's a tier 8 game or not, but that does of course mean that there are no tier 6s, there are no regular tier 5s, sorry, not tier 6s. There are of course tier 6s. But there are no tier 5s to bully, so it's a tier 8 game. We're here on Muravanka, and Mac has come over to the former home of the Magic Forest. So far he's engaged a Cromwell who has gone to a better place, and there is a very aggressive T-29 just quite happily pushing through this region of the map, and you can't help but look at this T-29 and wonder, what were you thinking, mate? What did you think you were going to achieve? You're just going to get worked over. To be fair, the enemy Tiger 1 is saying, our T-29 is a bot. Well, it does make you wonder sometimes. He's probably not a bot, he's probably just rubbish. But, hey, let's farm one of the most powerful tier for tier tanks in the game for all his health. Sure, why not? Now Mac is actually platooned up with, is it a clanmate, I think? No, not a clanmate, but Lord Cabacus. And Lord Cabacus in his Challenger actually picks up the kill. It's an interesting platoon, this, the Comet and the Challenger. The Comet is a tank that I like and have kept. The Challenger is a machine that I am up to on my second account, and, well, let's be honest, it's not very good. If you compare the two, the Challenger actually gets the better mobility and gets a better gun. But the Comet gets way better turret, it gets way better, wow, bounced on an AMX-12T, way better turret traverse, better gun depression. It feels like a much more comfortable tank to play than the Challenger. The Challenger is not a very good machine. Anyway, I'm massively digressing here. It looks like the friendly team, looks like Mac's team, have successfully won the fight for the, well, former home of the Magic Forest here. And they are pushing out. There's an SU-100 who was last spotted over in this general vicinity. Don't really want to get hit in the face by him. He gets a rather meaty gun. In fact, you could, I think, successfully argue it gets a 2-meteor gun for a tier 6 tank destroyer, but there we go. It's kind of like the ISU-152 of tier 6, except then Wargaming released the SU-100Y at tier 6 as a tank destroyer, which gets an even bigger gun because reasons. Turns out when you strap a 13cm naval cannon to a tier 6 tank destroyer, you get something that does a lot of damage. So Mac there manages to take out the VK3001D, and there you got to see the turret armor of the Comet coming into play. It's not enough to be relied upon, but it could get you funny bounces, especially the gun mantlet. And basically what the HD model has done is given the gun mantlet a massive slap in the face. There goes the SU-100, which is nice, but Dickomax also gets quite a large gun. Ow. In fact, it was a little bit lucky there. That was a kind of low damage roll. And Wargaming seem to have done this with a number of the British tanks. They did it with the Centurion Mark 7 as well. It gets a HD model, so they give it, and I quote, more historical turret armor values. Apparently Wargaming have been overestimating how thick British gun mantlets are. But from a gameplay perspective, it's not as if these tanks were overpowered to start with, and, well, they don't really seem to have given much to compensate the loss of turret armor, which is a bit sad. I mean, so the Centurion Mark 7 got literally nothing to compensate. It wasn't overpowered in the first instance, but, you know, what are you going to do? The Comet, okay, they rejigged the rear of the tank so you no longer, with the standard definition model, your gun couldn't actually point down over the rear of the tank, it pointed up, so running away and shooting was difficult. They've changed it, so your gun can now point down over the rear of the tank. Woohoo! Yay! Big whoop. Can Mac finally pick up the kill on that AMX-12T? Yes, he can. That guy's bounced 3 or 4 rounds that Mac's fired at him, which can get rather frustrating. But there we go. So, the scoreline is now 10-9. I'm going to stop complaining about how Wargaming treats British tanks when it gives them HD models, I swear. Now, this is a little bit of a risk because that VK 3001P potentially has Mac's flank. He puts 1 round into Mac. Takes out his track as well, for all that matters. VK is keeping cover, but he's not taking cover well enough, and Mac picks up kill number 5 on him. 4 of the enemy tanks remain, including their Super Pershing at tier 8, which, well, it's a tough nut to crack. With this gun, basically, you need the flanks or the big fat American booty. You don't really have the penetration to penetrate the weak spots on the Super Pershing. Speaking of big fat American booty, there's 1 shot, and for the top gun, there we go. That just leaves the Tiger, SU-152, and the Dicamax. Managed to bounce on the Tiger, which is a little bit unfortunate, but there you go. Sets the Tiger on fire, but he appears to be running a premium fire extinguisher. But there we go, there's kill number 7. Dicamax for a Radley Walters, Dicamax for a Radley Walters. Ah, oh, you big meanies, no Radley Walters. Only 7 kills. I know, first world problems. Let's go and have a look at the results for that game. So here we go, the results for that there game in the Comet. Ace Tanker, Fire for Effect, Spotter, Bruiser, High Caliber, and of course that Top Gun. Not quite a Radley Walters, but still a very nice result to have. Mac actually managed to pick up 3,042 damage in total. Considering that gun only does, what, 145, 148 or something damage per shot, you know, 3,000 is really quite a lot. 7 kills there, 1,529 base experience, which is a lot. Lord Cabacus there in the Challenger came 3rd on the friendly team, but there really was quite a drop-off between Mac and everybody else. Commiserations to the enemy Super Pershing. He picked up 2,500 damage. He did his job, finished top of his team, but it wasn't quite enough. And that T-29, just to give you a measure of how not successful the enemy team were, that T-29 we saw at the beginning, who, I don't know, went full retard, he did 288 damage, which corresponds to 1 penetrating shot, assuming he was using the top 105mm gun, and he did not come at the bottom of the team. In fact, he came 7th from the bottom, which is basically middle of the table. That was how bad most of the enemy team were. But hey, what are you going to do? You know, don't argue when your enemy have players like that. 43 shots fired, it's not very often you say that. 31 hits, 26 penetrations for the 3k damage. Most of it was from relatively close range. 6 hits received, 4 penetrations, 2 did not. 135 damage blocked by armor. Spotted 2 enemy tanks, damaged 11, killed 7, and got just under 1,500 assistance damage into the bargain, making a 22,000 credit profit. With a premium account, that would have been a 39,000 credit profit. It was only a 6-minute game, but 3k damage and 7 kills in, well, 6-7 minutes, I think that's a pretty good show. Anyway, let's move onwards, and this time we're going to drop it down a tier. Well, as I said, we're dropping it a tier for the second game. We're also shifting tech trees over to the Czechoslovakian tree now. Yes, that's right, this is a Czechoslovakian tank. And this is the first Czechoslovakian tank that was to be added to the game. This is the premium Tier 6 medium tank, the Skoda T-40, driven today by Pansy. Now this has become one of Pansy's favourite tanks, and he does perform very well in it. I've platooned up with him, and he really does manage to make this tank work. I actually have this machine myself. I haven't played it yet, and you might think, well, why the hell haven't you played it? Because I'm waiting to have a decent crew to use in it. You know, the Czechoslovakian tech tree, of course, starts off with light tanks, This is a medium tank, so I'm waiting until I've actually, made it a little way down the Czech tech tree and have a medium crew to actually put in this. So we're here on mines. This is a tier 6 game, so Pansy is top tier. And he is, well, he's already managed to take out that poor little ELC. And he's now just making short work of all of the bad guys who are not being very cautious. Let's put it that way. Slightly better aim shot there than the last, manages to set the T-34-85 on fire and kill him. Now, you might be wondering, what sort of gun does this thing get? Because it seems to hit quite hard. Well, it's essentially the short 88mm gun you get on the German tanks. There are differences, but that's basically the gun that this tank uses. 132 pen and 220 average damage with armor-piercing rounds. If you're willing to load a bit of premium, that penetration goes up to 200, and that's heat ammunition in this case, unlike the 177, I think it is, average penetration you get on the German APCR rounds. Anyway, so far Pansy has picked up 2 kills, one on that ELC and one on the T-34-85. There's another Skoda T-40 up here, or there was another Skoda T-40 up here, but he gets quickly obliterated. And, well, one thing you have to bear in mind with the Skoda T-40 is that the armor is pretty abysmal. Now, Pansy has actually switched to heat ammunition here, which is, entirely up to him. But he doesn't really need it for these targets, and indeed he actually switches back to armor piercing. I think he switched to it because at the time some of the shots he was firing were going into people's turrets, and he didn't really have time to properly aim those shots, and shots going into turrets with 130 odd pen at tier 6 are likely to bounce. Enemy Skoda T-40 there has been a little incautious, and he is going to pay for it. Auto aim does the job nicely, and he is dead, giving Pansy his 4th kill. T-28 has seen the writing on the wall, but apparently he hasn't seen which wall on which it is written, and becomes Pansy's 5th kill. There's only 5 of them left now. This is possibly an even faster game than the previous one. Enemy Cromwell, no. The main problem, as far as I can work out with this gun, is that the aiming stats are a bit naff. It's the accuracy is not great. It's a slightly derpy gun. But for a tier 6 medium tank, it hits pretty hard. I mean, it hits as hard as a number of tier 6 heavy tanks or tier 7 medium tanks, and hits harder than a number of tier 7 medium tanks, actually. T-34 there. Blech. There's Top Gun. There's only one of them left now, this Nashorn, and Pansy's not going to get anywhere near him before the game ends. And there we go. So, hopefully that gave you a little bit of an idea as to what the tier 6 Skoda Premium medium tank is like. Let's go and have a quick look at those results. So that game was enough for an ace tanker, bruiser, arsonist for burning that poor 3485 to death, 5 for effect, high caliber, and of course that Top Gun. Pansy managed to do 2,322 damage, which in a tier 6 medium tank is none too shabby, picking up those 6 kills and getting 1,132 base experience. That's a little low for a tier 6 medium tank, so this might have been played shortly after the Skoda T-40 was released, I'm not quite sure. When you have fewer people playing the tank and the ace requirement tends to be a bit lower, otherwise I'd have expected it to be higher, or maybe people just suck in the Skoda T-40. That's not to take anything away from Pansy's game there, it's just 1132 base XP is quite low for a tier 6 medium ace tanker. The enemy team were not particularly good, and once you've gone past Pansy there's a big drop off in terms of both damage and experience. In fact, there were only 2 guys in the entire game who did more than 1,000 damage, and the other one is driving the OI, that most balanced of machines. 16 shots fired, 15 hits, 12 penetrations for that 2,322 damage. Most of it was from relatively close range. 4 enemy vehicles spotted, 6 damaged, 6 destroyed, and 252 assistance damage into the bargain. That was a 3.5 minute match. Just to give you some sort of idea there. It was over pretty darn quick. With a premium account, that was a 41,000 credit profit. Bearing in mind, Pansy did fire a few heat rounds in that game, so that ate into his profitability a little bit, but even without the premium account, that would have still been a comfortable 20,000 credit profit. So there we go, a couple of mid-tier medium tanks to satisfy you there in that video. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, please feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel, and I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao, ciao.